Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to the webinar on AI agents. We are going to be showing you what real people are doing with AI agents, what they're investing in, and why it matters. And you've got three hosts for this webinar today: myself, Helen Tanner from DataCubed, Dave Howden from Superhuman, and James Parr from DataCubed. And you're going to hear a lot from Dave and James, so they'll introduce themselves a bit more later. But let me set the scene for what we're going to cover today. So everyone is banging on about AI, aren't they? My goodness, we live in a world where it's all about AI. Everything is coming out, everything is AI generated. My goodness, we're hyped. You're probably kind of fed up of it. There's so much kind of out there. And there's a whole load of jargon, loads of new terms for us to get our head around, some kind of old terms that have been around a long time. And oh my goodness, loads of acronyms, new acronyms every day. Nobody knows what they stand for, so many out there. And there's thousands of tools out there. This picture you can see here, this is not created by DataCube. This is called the MAD landscape. So MAD standing for machine learning, AI, and data. And every single logo you can see on the screen is a possible tool that you could use when it comes to machine learning, AI, and data. So every single one on there, it would take you a lifetime to try and go through and play with them. And yet alone, the developments and the monthly releases of technology, they're often deploying as well, sometimes weekly now. There's huge amounts of optimism out there. AI is going to revolutionize education. It's going to save retail. It's going to get us to Mars. It's going to save the world, right? Huge amounts of optimism and a whole load of scaremongering too, and fear of what AI can do and what that will mean for us. And rightly concerns about the impact, both in terms of the impact on our environment, with AI usage often requiring a lot of energy usage, and also are robots going to take our jobs, and concerns over the people side and the impact of AI. So lots of concern out there. So let's get real today. We are going to talk about AI agents. AI agents are all over all of the social media channels. There's so many people talking about it. When I'm out there talking to our clients, they are starting to dabble, don't really know where to start. And it's all about how can we help you get really practical, and how can we make AI agents super simple for you so that you can walk away from this webinar starting to think about how you can leverage it in your organizations. So what we're going to cover today is three things. We're going to talk about AI agents and the future of business efficiency. First of all, Dave's going to kick off and talk about AI agents in principle, introduce them to us, and explain what Superhuman AI do. And DataCubed and Superhuman AI are partners. Then we're going to look at AI agents in action. Dave and James from DataCubed are going to be showing you some demos, making it all real for you so we get away from the theory and the ideas of it. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. We'd really like you to be thinking about how can you leverage AI agents? What could they do for your organization? So we've got a chat in the middle there. Please ask your questions going along. We'll work through them at the end. And at the end, you can ask anything you'd like to as well. So that's an intro for me. I'm going to hand you over to Dave now.
Wonderful. Awesome.
Dave.
Well, kia ora, everyone. Check, mic check, 1, 2. Yeah, you've got me.
Good.
Okay, perfect. Good. Hels, thank you very much for that. Good morning, everyone. I think the DataCube team have set this up really nicely for you guys, which is, firstly, you've got an uncompromising opportunity to create some significant value, but also everyone's kind of got to start somewhere. So what we want to cover over the course of the next, who knows how long it'll be, because we're going to have some good dialogue, is essentially starting from the beginning of the story, moving to the middle, and then trying to figure out where the end might be when it comes to understanding the power of agents. But the most common headline that I want to kind of preface with everybody in this is that agents are really an evolution of the AI story that's happened over the course of the last 2 years since ChatGPT became a thing. And we're going to spend a fair amount of time making sure that we're not just regurgitating buzzwords to you over the course of the next half an hour or so. And we're going to kind of make a lot of things quite practically real in terms of what the art of the possible is, and also realize that that possibility is not a massive stretch in terms of being possible for you in your business. And we're going to show you a pathway to get there. So a bit of a promise from my perspective before we get started, and then I'll kind of introduce why I'm in the room. We'll go hard out and and be as authentic as we can over the course of the next half an hour. We're going to show some real tech. The ask from my perspective is, please do throw your hand up, throw some comments in the chat if there's anything specific that you want to double down or triple down on and really understand. Do let us know. We probably won't have the answer, and that's okay. But we may have an angle that can assist. So without further ado, we'll kind of get into it. Hells, again, from a perspective of who you know who's in the room with us, because you've got a good relationship, so you're bringing onto this webinar. Please feel free to advocate for anybody that you think may want to go down a certain avenue. Same with you, James. And without that, we will get into it. So let's test Zoom out and see if we can make this thing work. Bear with me 1 second. Let me know if you guys can see a screen.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Come through.
There we go. All right. Cool. Perfect. Okay, so my name is Dave Howden. I'm the CEO and co-founder of an organization called Superhuman. We support businesses to help them free their smart minds from tedious work. Now, that's very much a wise statement. And we don't focus on the what of AI in our value proposition, because ultimately we feel that there is a significant understanding that you guys have as business executives and business owners, which is you want to make the best of your human capital, regardless of the technology. And you will have made decisions around technology buying for decades and decades and decades related to a few key areas. And it kind of always anchors back to, how do I make the best out of what I've got in front of me at the time, and how does technology help me do that better? So moving your business to using mobile phones, making your business digital first by digitizing your applications, even by going all the way back to electrifying your office and moving to vehicles and fleeting your staff and applying any technology buying decision. There's really got one thing in common throughout any technology buying pattern, which is, how does this investment I'm about to make help me grow my business, help me be more efficient, and help me manage my risk? Now, that's nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's just a good business mantra, which is, I'm going to spend £1. How many pounds do I get back? And that leads me to the point that Hells was making around the hype cycle here. The reason that we believe it feels so hype-driven right now around the leverage that you can get from artificial intelligence is because you put £1 in, you get a lot of pounds back. And the promise of that return on investment and the speed at which it is starting to become evident that you can return your capital by investing in AI is it's not like an investment that you've made before in technology. And we're going to unpack that today and showcase some scenarios of which our collective customers are investing in essentially removing the biological limitations of their workforce for the purposes of creating better products, delivering better services, and supporting a better bottom line for their business, but doing it in a way that's exceptionally human without the fear mongering of everyone's going to come and take our jobs. But ultimately, wouldn't it be awesome if we were in a world where your smart people were free from tedious work? And that's what we're doing here at Superhuman in partnership with our great partners, including those from DataCubed. Okay. What that really lands in is that the output and the contra is probably not the right word to that, is that we believe that in a future, and the future for us is probably within the next 24 to 36 months, if you as an organization are not seriously contemplating moving your human-led work to some form of technology-driven agent services with AI, then there is going to a high chance that your business will become uncompetitive in the modern economy. Is that a good strategy to sell stuff, Dave? You're probably thinking in terms of fear mongering, and I would say no, it's not. But what I will say is there are organizations out there right now that aren't you, that have got money in their back pocket but no business, that are thinking about how to eat your industry's lunch, and it will not take them long to create market position because of how quickly the technology is moving in this space. So now is the time to act and defend and invest sensibly, but do it with people that know what they're doing, because it'll allow you to to maintain a market position and essentially not have done to your business what happened to the likes of Blockbusters, etc. So that's a bit of a belief system, but it's not a great way to do selling. Now at Superhuman, how we approach the conversation around AI is that we're looking at contextualizing what intelligence can do for your business. So to take a big step back, what we're really saying here is, forgetting agents for the minute, if you had a intelligence inside your organization that knew you as an individual and what your accountabilities were, it knew your team's accountabilities and your business's role within the world, it knew the value proposition of your organization and the regulatory framework and outlook of your business and what it needed to comply to, it would be the best, most successful, most on-point employee you could possibly have. And at the point that you have that intelligence that knows your regulation, your frameworks, your compliance standards, your products, your processes, all of that, then you can put it to work in whatever workflow that you want, be it reviewing contracts, negotiating pricing, supporting sellers, helping writing marketing, negotiating supply chain. Essentially, that capability is endlessly applicable when it knows the intricacy of your operating environment. And that's our approach to building what we call organizational intelligence. It's taking the power of AI technologies and bringing your business's context to that capability, so you can actually do proper work. Now, why is that important? That is important because agents and any AI services that are working on your behalf, in this instance, we'll call them agents, they're only going to make good, accurate decisions when they have the context of what your business is. It's very similar to a human and dragging them off the street and saying, congratulations that you've got a degree, aren't you awesome? Now get to work. It just doesn't happen, because the actual value of that individual is working into the culture of the business, the unwritten rules, the processes, the procedures. And it doesn't really matter how necessarily capable they are. If they can't conform and fit to the environment in which they need to operate in, you're really just going to have a problem. Now, where this becomes a little bit clickbait is to achieve that scenario where you have AI that knows you, your business, and intelligence that can work for you as a foundation for agents. You kind of need to hand the keys over. And that's where the trust scenario comes in. Because ultimately, what is your business? Well, your business is your IP. Your business is your methodologies, your processes, your procedures. And if you're essentially handing those over to a technology, it's an emotional reaction to say, well, actually, who's in control now and what's happening with all that IP? Well, what we see in highly successful businesses that are embracing AI agents for the purposes of democratizing work and removing human labor, so that labor can focus on their high value tasks and create value, is that they are institutionalizing their IP in agent services so they can drive accuracy up to help them grow, be more efficient, and manage their risk. And we believe this is the future. This is the future of a massive component of AI in the future. That it doesn't really matter how good your large language models are, unless there is a context of your organization. You're really just creating more problems over time. So this is very much a foundation of AI agentic services. So we'll skip past the Superhuman story for a minute, because I want to kind of get straight onto the magic equation. So how do we bring this to life? So before we kind of get onto the applications of agents and how that manifests itself in real life, let's take a look at how we build the equation for success. The first is generative AI as a discipline, which agents are akin to leveraging generative AI, but essentially agents are just a more complex way to chain AI services together. Generative AI as a concept essentially means you have at your fingertips the ability to interact with something that mathematically is very good at predicting what you want based on natural human language, which essentially means smart autocomplete, but far more advanced than that. Now, if we take a step back, what that means in reality is if you had something at your fingertips that knew the world's knowledge, public knowledge, internet knowledge, then you pretty much could execute any task that was viable within the public domain. Something at your fingertips that can type at light speed and recall information from across the public internet, that is a very powerful set of tools. But only if you remember the early versions of ChatGPT, it was really only good at doing niche things. And what we mean by niche things is writing a poem, writing a story, helping you write a script, or doing a bit of research. It wasn't very good at work tasks. It had no concept of who you are as an organization. So when you take that capability and you bind it with your organization, you start to be able to see where this is going to go. And where we mean by this is going to go, we mean validating the headlines that Hal's put up earlier on, which is this really is going to be the future of how work gets done. When you take something that can create and recall information at light speed, execute work tasks, and has the ability to know your business inside out. So you take the power of generative AI technologies and you bind them with your world, your intellectual property procedures, compliance standards, etc. This is just a small list of many things that you can do, including integrating those services to your CRM, ERP, Snowflake dataset, Databricks, anything where you've got data residing. You then get to this baseline view where you can start to make faster decisions, create more accurate work that is far more accurate than a human would be able to do, leverage insights from your data exceptionally quickly, and most importantly, shift the tedious work left into technology as opposed to paying people to sit behind a computer and crunch words, which really aren't that valuable in the grand scheme of things. Unfortunately, humans are relatively expensive and slow. Now, I say that because right now, the consumption of AI to help you accelerate tasks is an option because your competitors are not as far, your natural competitors, your current competition are not that far down the road that you're on. There's no one that's really light speed ahead. So right now, it's an option to be able to lean to this technology. Within the next 18 to 24 months, it's going to become far more of an obligation, especially for those organizations that are in tradable markets where they're trading on their gross profit and they're trading on public numbers. You can't hide behind inefficiency if your competition are producing 5 times the amount of output. So therefore, we now need to start looking at what is the application of this technology when you take the power of generative AI bounded with your world, and how you apply that magic to help businesses move forward. Okay, so where are we at? I'll explain this because I think this is really important to contextualize where we believe the world is at in automation of work when it comes to AI. So we use the analogy of self-driving cars in this instance because it's quite easy to manifest, but the same application applies to the automation of work within any domain. You've got level 0, which is essentially no automation. That's how we used to do things before any form of self-driving assistance came in, and any form of AI service came into building content, which is we do everything by hand. We change the gears ourselves, we drive ourselves. There is no assistance. Then we start to move to AI services that help assist the driver, which is what is the human doing but not doing very well that we can kind of recognize and support. So lane assistance, lane assistance, proximity sensors, things where essentially we can augment the human's capability with some extra technology to be able to assist the driver in what they're doing. Then we start to move to level 2, partial automation, lane assisted steering, assisted acceleration, automatic cruise control. This is the building blocks of automation and intelligence. And as those things come together in terms of automation intelligence, you start to get to this point where you're in the conditional automation phase, which is where the car's making the decision to do things without you even knowing about it. Now, why we're talking about self-driving cars is that we've seen this journey of adoption before, between where we were at 10 years ago with cars being fully manual, all the way through to where we're at today, where it's getting pretty close to full self-driving. But we're not there yet, but we're definitely kind of at that layer 3, layer 4 stage with cars, where if you go to San Francisco, you can jump in a full self-driving car and no human is involved at any point. Now, when we relay that to AI and work and this whole scenario of large language models and Gen AI and Gen AI agents, we're starting to approach that conditional automation phase where you used to, up until where you still do right now, but the first versions of ChatGPT and other models was you ask a question and you get an answer back. It's assistive work. You need something, you ask for it, you get it back. When we start talking about the advancement of that into AI agents, we start to move into this conditional automation where the AI services are doing things for you preemptively and making decisions based on variables in and around your world. So you're not necessarily involved in the full decision-making process. The difference between self-driving and AI agents is that you can kind of tangibly see what a self-driving car is doing because you're inside it. When it comes to handing a workload over to an AI agent, you really want to start to think of how built the consequences of how does the human race build trust with something that doesn't really know what's going on unless you were the person that designed it. So what I believe we're going to go and see over the next 5 or so years is as we start to see the emergence of technology that can do things for you without you knowing that they even need to be done, such as paying bills for you, negotiating your tax returns, all these things that really are not very helpful to do as a human being, but can be done by services, is that we believe actually the tech is very, very close to be able to do a lot of these things very, very competently. But is the human race and are you ready to be able to embrace that? And that is going to be the making about how well these technologies get accelerated over the course of the next 5 years or so. So the problem that we're essentially looking at with the use of AI right now is that there is lack of context. And for agents to really succeed, we think we need to solve for 3 things. We believe that AI tools right now, they lack specific understanding of you. And that is something that's going to need to be solved by us as human beings, which is how much information are we willing to put into AI services to be able to help them do a good job. This is no different from the early days of the internet when none of us wanted to put credit card information into the web, or none of us wanted to put personal information online. We soon realized that actually the market kind of caught up and it was safe. And yes, there was risks associated to it, but the benefits to society and the economy outweighed the risks. And then we started to hand the information over for the purposes of driving better results. AI, we think, is going to be the same. It's very, 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 very reasonable that over the course of the next couple of years, individuals that are in a work or non-working environment will have lots of variables about their life stored in an AI service for the purposes of getting work done. If your AI services that exist in a work environment haven't got the context of your business, you actually start to create risk. And why is that? That's because if I have a conversation with Hells about a topic, she knows my context because she knows where I live, she knows what company I work for, she knows a little bit about my history. So when she answers and gives me some advice, she's going to give advice in the context of me. AI has very little context of you. So how can it give good advice and good recommendations and do things for you if there is no context? So for example, if you ask an AI tax advisor that has no concept of who you are, what is my income tax for 2023? Is it going to give you US tax advice, New Zealand tax advice, French tax advice? Who knows? And all that is needing to understand where you are in the world. But there are 1,000,001 different variables that mean that AI can't do a good job, it doesn't understand that context. So that context issue will lead to risk and efficiency, which will ultimately hinder adoption because trust will be low. It's also fair to assume that to build AI services today, you need to be well resourced and technical. Now, this is coming down the stack quite a lot. Like there is a lot more low code, no code services coming to bear now. Challenge with that is the tool sprawl in terms of creation is huge. Helston and the DataCube team showed this earlier on. The map of AI services that are available is just huge. And it doesn't really kind of matter if they become simple to use. If there's just too much to use, that you get overwhelmed. So the market is significantly fragmented and moving fast because of that democratization, which is actually making things more complicated, even though technically things are simpler. That leads to integration complexity and automation complexity. How do you stitch all of these things together if you need to create end-to-end workflows and make sure that everything you have is enterprise ready? Because ultimately, when you automate something, the business reliance on it can create complexity by not doing a good job. And because of the speed at which the market is moving, we're going to see the same thing we saw with the cloud migration era. The skills are going to become scarce to do a good job when it comes to building intelligent services, including AI agent services. And as an organization that doesn't have a profit center around these resources, or an organization that's value proposition isn't one where the talent can really flex its muscles, it's going to be quite challenging for a business that's not in tech to be able to retain tech talent because of, one, the cost of them, and then considered not a profit center, and two, the technologists tend to go where they can play with the best toys and have the most impact. And so that's going to become a challenge, similar to how it was in the cloud migration area, where all of the greatest talent sits within the service providers, and then all the two-tier talent sits within the customer base. So the question that we posed to ourselves earlier on in the year is, as Superhuman, how far do we think this is going to go? And this is very much a human response to the technology to do some really complex and gnarly things to fundamentally change industries is already there right now. And there's a reason that we're not there now. It's because the system says no, and the human part of the system is not ready for it yet. And that's a really good thing. So if we take a look at early adopters versus general adoption, let me just build this whole slide out. So what we're saying here is that right now we're kind of in the early adoption phase where organizations are pushing the boundaries to see what is tolerable within the market, what's tolerable for customer adoption, what's tolerable for internal employee adoption, and what needs to be forced, versus what needs to be negotiated in terms of applying technology to people's roles where it can be perceived as a gain, but also a threat. There is, however, a risk of being too futuristic, which is, whilst adoption is great, you can get to that scenario where actually automating things with AI can fundamentally kill your value proposition. And I'll give you a little bit of an example of that. We work with a large travel agency over in this part of the world, and we automated how they create itineraries for their customers. Now, it just so happens, it turns out that the ideal customer of this travel agent, which is a very, very large travel agent, online travel agent, the value proposition of that organization was average age of 45 to 60-year-old individual who's relatively wealthy, wants to pick up the phone and speak to a travel agent for the purposes of having them craft a custom itinerary for their holiday. The perceived value of that engagement is an experienced travel consultant building a highly personalized, well thought out, thoughtful and considered travel itinerary. Now, if I build an AI service that can do that in 5 seconds, what impact was that going to have on that customer's value proposition? And it turns out quite a negative one, because actually people are paying a premium to have a conversation. They're paying a premium to be able to engage with a human being, and they want to believe that that human interaction is leading to thoughtful outputs. That's why they pay a premium. So for us to come in and automate that process, where by the time they put the phone down, the itinerary is already in their inbox, the feedback was, it's a great itinerary, but evidently you've just automated that. So what's the point of me having the conversation with you in the first place? So there are ways to engineer around that. The point I'm trying to make here is we really, as human beings who are in business and senior executive positions, at this point in the journey of AI, need to really take a long, hard look about what our value proposition is as an organization. And what does it make sense to put into AI services versus what does it make sense to help the humans just do a better job? So in the example of the travel itinerary scenario, we purely delayed delivering the itinerary by 15 minutes and the whole problem went away. So there is some social engineering we need to think about when it comes to building AI services. Automating too much at too much speed with not enough care and consideration about who it is you actually work for can lead to being too futuristic and automation for automation's sake can actually damage your business and not assist it in growing. Okay, so we're going to look at the AI landscape out there for a little minute, just to give a little bit of education. So we're talking about AI and AI agents. AI is a very broad topic. And specifically, we're focusing, and James and I are focusing today on literally one area of that, which is the generative part. Now, interestingly, a lot of the really good AI agentic services, they're actually leaning on quite a few of these different disciplines. So, for example, we're going to look at an example in a minute, which is leaning on generative AI to build complex documents, but it's also using computer vision and machine learning to do complex maths. And it's also looking at actually, yeah, they're kind of the three main areas. So, a bit of a word of caution. When you hear the concept of AI agents, don't necessarily think that this is another thing that wasn't here last year. The component parts of AI haven't really changed. The disciplines of computer vision, machine learning, robotics, and speech recognition and natural language, they are the main disciplines of the discipline of artificial intelligence. Agents are more a construct about how you stitch these things together. And that really is the only difference between where we were 6 months ago. From a marketing lens, the advancement has not really necessarily been in the AI capabilities themselves. It's been in the ability to stitch different AI services together for the purposes of chaining work. And the chaining of that work leads to an agent-like scenario where it can do a little bit of a little piece of work, pass it on to another agent to another piece of work, make a decision based on variables, and bring this whole ecosystem of AI services together. So here's kind of the difference laid out. So AI agents and agentic AI, think about, so on the left-hand side here, we've got AI agents. Agents are designed to do a specific task and do this task specific very, very well. This is no different from a human-led organization. You have people in your business that have a discipline in legal, finance, marketing, customer support, sales, etc. There's very rarely one person in the business that can do everything. Agents are no different. You build an agent with a specific discipline and to carry out a specific task with specific capabilities to be able to execute part of a chain of work. You then put those agents into an agentic system. And that sounds complex, but really it isn't. It's an agentic system as a way of saying, well, to complete a piece of work, how many of those agents need to be involved? When you build those agentic systems, the work is executed by the agents that are in the chain, and you start to get this scenario where you can automate the future of work. I will give you an example. I would like to automate how the recruitment process works in a business. And you think about all the disciplines that exist within recruiting someone. So there's screening a CV, there's doing research on the role, there's writing the job description, there's posting that onto social, there's negotiating the contract, there's baselining the pay of the individual, there's negotiation of the contract with the individual, and then there's writing the letter of employment, and then there is onboarding the staff member. There's probably about 7 or 8 different disciplines there, which would mean there are 7 or so different agents built for each specific task with each specific capability. And then you chain those roles together in an agentic pipeline for the purposes of automating that process, which each agent itself is doing the individual task. Now, we are going to look at a real world scenario about how this has played out with a customer of ours, where we've built an agentic system that fully executes the writing and construction of a geotechnical engineering report. Take a look at that in a second. But I want to pause for reflection here on the language. AI agents are parts of a system designed to do a specific task. And then the agentic automation of that is the chaining together of those services for the purposes of executing that task. Now, to go a little bit technical for a second, I know James is going to do a demonstration on the agent SDK from OpenAI. There's also technologies such as LangFlow, LangChain, Flowise, all are low-code, no-code ways to build agentic pipelines. This is highly achievable with a little bit of technical expertise, but ultimately we would counsel you to lean on organizations that do this for a living, because getting it right is very powerful. Getting it wrong is also very powerful. So yeah, and we're looking forward to seeing that the work that James has done, proof of concepting a few of these things out for you guys later on. Okay, so let's take a look, and I'm starting to wrap this through with a real world example. So we're going to show a little demo in a second. This is for an organization called Soil and Rock Geotechnical Engineering. These guys do around 3,000 geotechnical engineering reports a year. Now, a geotechnical engineering report, for those who haven't been through the building process, is a requirement of your council to do an assessment of the land at which you're about to build on. And an engineer will come out and drill lots of holes in the ground and take away core samples. And they will test the soil for contaminants, its suitability to build on, its compression, its shear strength. Essentially go, right, based on this land that you have, what do you need to do to make sure everything's rock solid to build on? What makes up a geotechnical engineering report is the smarts of an engineer who understands geoscience, the council requirements for what that report needs to write, and then doing the mathematical gymnastics to turn all the measurements from core samples into the scientific output for the purposes of satisfying council. It is a processing task, because science is the science and the measurements are the measurements, and translating measurements into the science is the task. And for this customer, it takes them around 10 hours per report to do that mathematical gymnastics and write the reports that are associated to council. So 3,000 reports a year, 10-hour task, shifted to an agentic service, now takes less than 10 minutes of AI processing, which for these guys puts close to £2 million back into their bottom line. Now, these guys aren't a huge organization, about 40 people. So £2 million is a decent chunk of change to put back into their organization. Why is this important? It's important because there is zero value to the customer in that 10 hours worth of work. Their customer does not care how the report gets written. They don't care that it takes the person 10 hours to crunch the numbers. They just want the report so they can get on with building their house. How many more reports can you do if you take 40 people, 3,000 reports, 10 hours per report, extrapolate that out? This is not just saving them £2 million a year. Those 10 hours can be put back into revenue generating work. So the upside is close to 3 times that across their business about how much is valuable for them. And this has been all done using readily available AI technologies chained together with smart people that know what they're doing from an AI perspective, and smart people that know geoscience, and collaborating to build something that's meaningful. So we'll take a quick look at this in action. What I'm about to show you is the AI platform for this customer. This is sped up by a factor of about 2 times. So it normally takes 10 minutes. It's going to take about three or 4, and we're going to show you the output. So we'll get into it. Oh, hang on, sorry guys. We go. Okay, so they're logging into their AI workspace, which is where all of their agents go and play. And this is for the Soil and Rock crew, and it's an AI drafter for something that's called a ground inspection report. It's the most common geotechnical report. Now, in the background, what this customer has done is they've uploaded all the prerequisite documents for the report to SharePoint. So this is pulling from SharePoint, and it's saying, based on what you've provided in SharePoint, what parts of a geotechnical engineering report do you want to write? So in a standard one, there's 27 sections to a geotech report. And we're saying, no, just go ahead and write the report as you would based on the information that you've got. And you can see here now that there is numerous AI agents going off and doing a whole load of funky different things. A computer vision agent is going and reading all of the topology reports and council imagery from the site plans. There's then a geoscience agent that's doing the mathematical gymnastics on that. There's a fact-checking agent that's checking the work of that. And there's a drafting agent that's pulling all the information together and drafting. And so I think there's 6 different agents that are working in harmony to build out this geotechnical engineering report. Now, just as a reminder, this process would be a 10-hour human-led task, and we've sped this up by a factor of 100%, so it's moving through at a bit of a rate of knots. But what we're going to be outputting from this is a council-ready engineering report that is far more accurate than a human could ever do, in the format that is ready for council. Here it is, it's completed. So we'll take a look at the report. Now, what goes along with every service that we build is an explainability report that shows exactly how the AI service built what it built. So the engineer in this instance can eyeball what happened. And so you can see here that the AI service is not just writing text, it's also pulling in imagery and drafting imagery that's required for the engineering report. And then doing that's a summary of shear ground condition tabling. Now, I do appreciate probably none of you are geotechnical engineers, so this won't make a whole heap of difference. But this is well beyond what you are used to from just inputting and outputting questions from ChatGPT. This is true AI pipelines at work, all with readily available technology that's available today. So the AI service has not just built this in the UI, there's also a downloadable Word document, because this is important. What you actually need is the artifact that satisfies the process. In this instance, the council want the document. They don't just want some output in your UI. So the AI has created the document in the format that is appropriate for council, ready to be signed off by the engineer and submitted for resource consent approval. 10 hours to 10 minutes. And I think we're done. So there we go. So what we've just seen is an example of an AI pipeline that has taken complex inputs, real world that exists today, ingesting those, learning from them, matching them with the geotechnical science, building out a council consent, and having that in the format that the user is ready to submit. The removal of tedious work, freeing people from that stuff. This is what we think the future looks like for all complex workloads that are related to this. Okay, so in kind of summary, when we kind of wrap up and close, I think it's important to look at the other types of work that you can apply these agentic pipelines to. And I think James is going to touch on these in a second. This is kind of a few inspirations for the other types of work that we execute here at Superhuman. Complex report writing, responding to sales RFPs, audits, anything that's considered humanly, biologically limiting due to reading too much or writing too much is fully automatable through AI pipelines. Ultimately, the more complex, the better. And this isn't just limited to science, and geotechnical is limited to anything that's considered complex. A few of the use cases that we've worked on, just to give you a little bit of inspiration, from writing travel itineraries through to doing audits for clinical trial organizations, through to compliance for large casinos. You name it, the technology is there to do it. It just takes trust, belief, and investment to make it happen. And these are the early movers in the industry that are making it happen. So with that, I'll finish how I started, which is organizations without AI-assisted work are likely to become inefficient and will have more risk and are not likely to grow as fast as your competition. I encourage you guys to reach out and make your problems our problems, make your opportunities our opportunities, and figure out how we can create some magic for you guys in collaboration with Data Cubed. And I'm going to pass over to James, I believe, and to take a look at the OpenAI Agent SDK.
That's great. Thanks, Dave. I think probably this will be a good lead in, actually. So my plan here is to share a little bit of an example around the OpenAI Agent Software Development Kit. as you mentioned. I think it will reinforce the value that you guys are adding by having that knowledge of the business and, constructing this and making it production ready. So I think that would be a good lead in, but this shows like how you can get your hands on it yourself and have a play. So I'll just share my screen. Right, can everyone see some slides?
Got it. Yeah.
Great, so I'll just get started. Wrong screen. Right, I'll just use this one for the start. So just to set the sort of context for this, OpenAI recently, a few weeks ago, released their OpenAI Agent Software Development Kit, which is just a framework for creating these multi-agent workflows that they've sort of introduced just now. It's a Python based, so it is code, but it's Python based. It's open source. All you need is some OpenAI API credits to run. And it just helps you create agents and agent workflows, allowing them to pass jobs between themselves and put guardrails on them and monitor them as well. It includes some examples. So they've got a repository of all their code, and it includes some examples which they are extending. I saw they added a new one a few days ago. And I'm just going to go through one of those examples today and bring it to life and show you sort of how easy it is to just get set up with one of these examples. And I guess what I think here is valuable is being able to touch this stuff and understand it by doing. And it can inspire ideas about, oh, okay, there's a use case here. I can understand how these things work. I can see a use case. And then maybe that's where you can get in touch with someone like Superhuman to go, I want to productionize this. I want someone to put something that's robust in place and repeatable. So this particular example is a research bot. As I said, this is one of the examples that OpenAI have released. It's a multi-agent workflow, and in this multi-agent workflow, there are a few specialized roles. So there is effectively like a chat bot almost for each one of these roles, but they've been prompted and instructed in such a way to make them behave like a particular role in a workflow. So to start with, we've got a research manager. So that will take a prompt from a user and it will manage some research. They'll then pass off the next part of the research to a research assistant who will define a list of web search terms. And that research assistant will then pass a web search term to a number of junior researchers. So each one of them takes a single web search term and goes and scours the web to pull some information back for each of those terms. They then pass all of that information back to the research manager, who then passes it to a senior researcher who drafts a final report at the end. So that's the workflow. So you can see information is being passed backwards and forwards to a manager. You can think of these as almost like human roles that are being imitated by generative AI. So I will now run that, but I just wanted to set that context for what you're seeing when I run it. So if I head over to my VS Code, so I've got a repository effectively on screen here. This is code. There's no way of getting around that. I am looking at Python code, but in terms of just running it, I'll show you what it looks like in the command line here. So I've just kicked this code off. In a second, it's going to ask me for some input. So here it's asked me, what would you like to research? I have tweaked this example to make it extra relevant to DataCubed so it can do some research for us. So here I'm going to ask it, can you give me some new developments in data and AI for the last quarter relevant to SMEs in the UK? So if I hit enter, let's kick that off. So just to remind you, the research manager is now taking that prompt that I've given it and is now passing that over to a sort of a research assistant, who's then passing that over. It's defining some web search term. In this case, it's picked 10 web search terms, and it's passed each one of those off to a junior researcher who has got a tool in their toolkit that allows them to go and scrape the internet for information on that web search term. Each one of those junior researchers is then passing that web search term back up to the research manager, who then passes that information over to a research writer or a senior researcher, who then prepares this report for me. So if I copy and paste this output, then I'll put it in my browser. We can see on the right-hand side here, this is our report that's been generated at the back end of that. So here I've prompted this thing to provide me links to the further research. So we've got an executive summary up here, but then we've also got we've got 7 different categories here of different advances in data and AI relevant to small and medium businesses, and some follow-up questions as well at the end. So you can see how quick that was to generate. I can also, in the process of that running, I can go in, similar to what Dave showed earlier, I can go and see in OpenAI the progress of this agent running, and I can see that it's gone and had these various search agents that have gone and scoured the web for different bits and pieces. I can see the instruction that's been given to each of these research assistants. I can also see the output of each of the research assistants that's been passed back up to the research manager and a writer. So this is part of what OpenAI are giving you as part of their software development kit, is this sort of traceability and monitoring that you've got on top of all this agentic workflow. But I guess what isn't here and is worth mentioning is that this hasn't yet got a memory. So it doesn't remember the last time that this ran. It doesn't remember what it's generated before. It doesn't know what you've delivered before. If this was a research bot and you're providing this information over to your customers, it doesn't know what you've delivered before. So you could get around that by saying, actually, I'm going to give a tool to my writer, researcher, or my manager. You can see previous reports that have been delivered, so make sure there's no overlap. Or you could try and give this agent a memory, but that would have to be something else you build in. So that, again, I think that really highlights the value that Superhuman are bringing, in that they will be building this thing for you, so you don't have to worry about, oh God, how am I going to build in all these different layers? And how am I going to productionize this and maintain this and support this going forward? But I do think there is value in people getting their hands dirty and playing with these new releases, because it's not that hard to get started, and it does prompt these ideas of, okay, well, now I've done that, I can see the use case, I can see the value. What else can I get it to do? And it demystifies it somewhat, because it isn't that new and it isn't that complicated, as Dave pointed out. One of the other things that we'd like to do when we're setting up these agents, particularly from DataCube's perspective, is provide data that we've prepared for our clients. So get their data warehouse as a data source that these agents can use. And I think one of the things I wanted to point out is that that's now becoming an increasingly valuable thing that we're doing in the data warehouse, is getting your data ready for these agents to work off. So if your data is just scattered throughout systems and hasn't been prepared, cleansed, and sort of standardized, it's going to be harder for agents to work effectively than if we build you a warehouse, model the data correctly, make it work and align to your sort of business processes and business semantics. That's going to make it much easier for an agent to pull the information and join the information together to give you good output. So they're all the things we're thinking about at the moment. We're tracking this closely. I recommend that people get stuck in and play with this, because I think it does prompt good ideas and reduces the fear factor. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I wanted to race through that so we've got some time for questions at the end.
Thank you, James. So yes, thank you, Dave. Thank you, James. I hope you all agree. Really interesting examples there. We'd really like your questions. So if you've got any questions, add them to the chat. While you're adding them, I think, the types of use cases we're seeing from clients build on what Dave and James have talked through. One being, I want to Q&A my business. I've got all this information. How can I just Q&A it like I would on ChatGPT? The next one going, I've got all this unstructured information that could be valuable in PDFs and in Word documents and in PowerPoints and all over the place. So how can we extract that really easily? And generally, how do we remove manual processes and free people up to do higher value things? So those are the things that have come through. In terms of questions, we've got Lee's AI takeaways from the meeting. It's very helpful, so it saves us all. Thank you, Lee. We had a question from someone who, at the point, Dave, you were doing the Superhuman demo. He just said, "Can you explain the use case again?" Could you just briefly explain what the use case was before you brought that demo to life?
Yeah, sure. No, thank you for that. Obviously, I got too passionate about these things, so I probably skipped all the vital data. So, the council, any council, requires a series of information to approve any form of building in most countries. What that means is there's a whole load of work that needs to happen by a whole load of contractors to essentially go and assess the land that an individual has purchased, to say, yep, what's going to be built on that land conforms to the unitary plan, the council plan, the infrastructure plan, anything that's considered changing the purpose of use for that piece of land, which includes what's being built, how's it going to be built, does it conform to building standards, etc. The preparation of the work, the preparation of those reports for council to essentially give you a tick to say, yes, you can build something, is right now a wholly human written process, which is smart people going out, looking at things, designing things, and then putting it into a format which council can read and say, yeah, we agree that it meets all of the standards and we're going to sign it off. The most heavy lifting part of that process is something called the geotechnical engineering report. That is a report where an engineer has gone and looked at your building site and has said, yep, that land is suitable for you to build the property that you want to build on it. And it's suitable because the ground can take the weight of the property, X, Y, and Z, and all of the things that say there's not going to be any slips, or that the soil is compact enough, and which allows you to have a design that is fit for that site. So, for example, a building site that is made of rock, you need very shallow foundations. You don't need to go very, very deep. You need minimal engineering. Where a site that is made of literally sand and clay, you're going to need to put, deep foundations in to make sure your property doesn't move. All of that is based on geotechnical science, which is people coming out and drilling holes into the ground and saying, based on what we found in the ground, we need to turn that into something that says this is how you need to engineer your site. The use case for this is the amount of human processing to take what comes out of the ground and turning it into the report for council is about 10 hours worth of work. We've removed that work by building a series of AI services that know intimately all the parts that go to building that report, which are, how do you interpret what's on the site? How do you pick up information from the site plans about what's on that site? How do you understand what geoscience needs to happen to make a determination about what the outcome needs to be? And how do you match that with good best practice engineering? So what's prepared by the AI service is scientifically accurate, based on fact, and is prepared for council, and takes that 10-hour human process down to about 10 minutes worth of computation. Ultimately, the use cases here is smart people doing things they weren't designed to do, and gives all of that time back. So I'm hoping that makes some more sense in terms of the use case, but happy to kind of pick it up separately, Lee, if you wish. I think it was Lee that answered. Oh, sorry, it was Amandeep. Yes, but happy to pick that up one-on-one if you wish.
That's great. Yep. He's just said yes, so that's great. Thank you. Lovely. Well, we haven't got any more questions, so let me kind of bring this to a close and kind of share kind of next steps from here. So, so what we did today was talk about AI agents and the future of business efficiency. I think the main thing that really landed for me from Dave's section was the context, and the agents knowing your business is absolutely key. And I think the main takeaway that James emphasized was this play, experiment, get hands-on, and that's going to inspire you. So, so what we'd like to do is ask you as a follow-up, what could AI agents do for your business? What types of things are coming to mind? Now, you might not want to share that on a public forum like this, and I don't blame you. But there are so many things you can do. The use cases could be replicated for any industry, any organization, all about that easy access to information, getting loads of complex information out of complex data, and automating manual processes. So as a final, here are our names. You've got all our names there. If you don't know us, connect with us on LinkedIn. If you want to follow up, we can have a one-to-one session and we can bounce ideas around about specific use cases for your organization, for your sector, for your team even. We'd be really delighted to do that. So thank you ever so much for your time, everybody. Any final words, Dave and James?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you inviting us on. Yeah, awesome to spend some time with you guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah,
Sounds
thanks
good.
all.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, James. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for your time, everyone.